I didn't think it was presidential. Someone should step up to something like this. The optics are very important, and you really can't say you're going to wipe out an entire civilization.
A lot of this is propaganda. A lot of this are things that we've seen before. The U.S. was already in a hole, and this makes it infinitely worse.
Don't always believe what he says.
When he's threatening genocide?
I think he's threatening genocide. I think he's threatening to remove the Iranian regime.
What I hear on the panel is a lot of people being triggered by Trump, and I think that's what happens when someone with a backbone comes in and says, no, you know what, we're going to stand up to evil.
Here we are on the precipice of a nuclear holocaust.
Piers Morgan, one of the most watched interviewers on the planet, is going hard against Trump over the current Iran situation. He's called parts of it madness, criticized the shifting goals, and suggested Trump is being reckless. When a big voice like Piers starts pushing back this aggressively, it's worth taking a closer look at what's really going on.
Because this baboon is in office and he's like, oh, Bibi, how can I make you happy? Can you please give me more money? Am I going to be a hero, Bibi?
You know something? You're all taking the bait.
The US president had two enormous success stories to celebrate and give thanks for this weekend, besides Easter itself. First, there was Artemis 2, a US-led mission to send human beings further from the Earth than any living being has ever travelled. It's a precursor to returning to the moon and even reaching Mars. By any measure, it's a breathtaking triumph and a tribute to American ingenuity. Second, the daring and audacious mission to save a stricken US Air Force colonel who was forced to eject from his fighter jet in central Iran. More than 150 aircraft spent 50 hours in a race against Iranian forces deep inside enemy territory. The US military is probably the only military that could have pulled that off, and make no mistake, it was humiliating for Tehran.
Piers calling Trump's threats chilling and potentially a war crime. Piers has always been a bit of a wild card. He's defended Trump many times in the past, especially against what he calls woke insanity. But here he's clearly uncomfortable with Trump's approach to Iran. He's framing it as dangerous escalation. This is interesting because Piers usually loves strongman energy.
Who do you think you are? You're tweeting out the F word on Easter morning? You'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah. So obviously you're mocking the religion of Iran. Okay. If you seek a religious war, that's a good idea. But by the way, no decent person mocks other people's religions.
The president doubled down yesterday, reiterating that if no deal is reached with Iran by tonight, there will be an all-out assault on civilian infrastructure in which, quote, very little is off limits. Well, some of this was delivered while standing alongside the Easter Bunny, but this is no joke. This morning, Trump issued a post which does nothing less than threaten the Iranian people with genocide. A whole civilization will die tonight, he said, never to be brought back. I don't want that to happen, but it probably will. Those words should be chilling to not only the Iranian people, but to everybody. US presidents don't threaten genocide because the US is not capable of genocide. At least that's the world we all grew up in. If you break with that principle, you break it with it any moral authority the US has, and the world becomes a very different place. I understand the argument that Trump is unique in politics and that many in his core base enjoy the fact that he says and does what he feels like. But war isn't about appealing to a base. It's about building consensus for the most expensive and deadly gamble any leader can make, especially as the US now prepares to escalate hostilities to a level which will shock the world. Not so very long ago, we documented with precision the incoherent ramblings of President Biden. And not long before that, there were enormous scandals about the dignity of the office because President Obama saluted with a latte, wore a tan suit, and used a selfie stick.
Look, Piers isn't entirely wrong here. The messaging has shifted quickly from stopping nuclear weapons to opening the Strait of Hormuz to hints of regime change. Foreign policy is complicated and mixed messaging can create confusion. But the bigger question is Piers giving legitimate criticism, or is he playing the classic British contrarian role for maximum engagement?
If the next wave of US attacks is anything like the president is warning, we'll soon have a definitive answer. Well, to debate all this, the host of System Update, Glenn Greenwald, the former US Deputy National Security Advisor, Katie McFarland, the founder and CEO of the Young Turks, Cenk Uygur, and the former US Air Force combat pilot, Ryan Bodenheimer, known to many as Max Afterburner. Well, welcome to all of you. Well, let me start with you, Glenn Greenwald. I've got to say, there's this whole thing about, you shouldn't take everything Trump says literally, shouldn't take it overly seriously. But what else are we supposed to do when the President of the United States literally posts a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again? I don't want that to happen, but it probably will, about Iran and the 90 million people that live there. What else are we supposed to do with that but take it seriously and literally?
If you don't take that extremely seriously and literally, then you're acting with unbelievable recklessness. And this is not the first statement that Trump has made that has suggested this. He was talking to reporters over the weekend and essentially saying that there'd be nothing off the table in terms of what he would do to Iran, what he would destroy. We're talking about civilizational annihilation. That's not my interpretation. That's literally what Trump himself said. And even if it turns out that doesn't happen, he finds a way to get out of it this time. He postpones the deadline again. The fact that we have an American president in the middle of a war threatening to annihilate permanently a thousands-year-old civilization over a country that did not attack the United States, has never attacked the American homeland, has not tried, is one of the most disturbing and morally reprehensible things I've ever heard an American president say in the last.
This is classic Piers Morgan. He loves the confrontation. He'll have someone on, push them hard, and then deliver his own strong take. It makes great television, but when it comes to Trump, Piers has a long history of both praising and burying him depending on the day. That's part of what makes him compelling and also frustrating. This moment reveals a real tension inside the broader right-leaning cultural sphere. On one side, you have the hardcore America First crowd that wants maximum strength and leverage against enemies like Iran. On the other, you have people like Piers and parts of the manosphere who are deeply skeptical of any new Middle East involvement. Piers represents a certain type of old-school British pundit, pro-Western civilization, but very wary of endless wars after seeing what happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. The cultural significance is huge because Piers has a massive international audience. When he criticizes Trump, it doesn't just stay in America. It ripples across the UK, Australia, Canada, and beyond. We're also seeing how podcast culture and big interviewers have replaced traditional news media at the place where real political conversations happen. Rogan, Piers, Lex Friedman. These guys move culture more than CNN does now. The danger is that constant infighting plays into the left's hands. They love when the right starts eating itself. Here's my honest take. Piers Morgan brings valuable skepticism and sharp questioning. That's good. Blind loyalty is dangerous, but we should also be careful not to let big media personalities dictate the temperature too early. Trump has barely had time to implement his full agenda. Foreign policy is messy. Peace through strength sometimes requires tough moves. The real test will be the results: lower energy prices, actual stability, or more chaos. At the end of the day, this shows how fractured the cultural right has become. We agree on fighting woke culture, but foreign policy is where the real disagreements live. If you enjoy these deep dives into how politics and pop culture collide, smash that like button, subscribe and turn on notifications, and drop a comment below. Do you think Piers Morgan is being fair to Trump, or is he just playing both sides for views? Share this with someone who watches Piers or Rogan. This is Kevin on Culture, and I'm out.